So good to be here today. I could say a lot more about Tony and Lori and our friendship over the years, and their son, Clayton, is close in age to what my girls were. They went to school together, and I've served on the board and helped found a church in St. Louis called Life Christian Church. And Tony used to be on staff there. I've always liked Tony. Tony can figure out anything. Yeah, I don't care what it is. Tony can figure out anything. He can do more than 10 average people could ever do. And he's a trendsetter. I told Sherry this morning. I remember the first time I saw Tony back when preachers we knew we all have to wear suits. And in case you can't tell, I'm not really a suit kind of guy. But we all wore suits. I remember the first time I saw Tony walk in with, I don't know if it was a suit or a pair of slacks and a sport coat, but he had his shirt tail out. I was like, oh man, he's a rebel. He's a rebel. And we have lots of fun times, memories. Had a great time last night just talking and enjoying being together. And it's an honor for us to be here. I remember when Tony first started the church, he told me, you're going to be one of the first missionaries we support, and you guys have been helping us for a long time. I want to acknowledge something else too. Tom and Mary Schwartz are sitting over here, and they came in a while ago. I was totally stunned. Last night, about 10 or 10:30, I thought, I forgot to put anything on Facebook about being at the church tomorrow. And remember when I was here the last time, 2 or 3 years ago, whenever that was, that I posted something, and some lady that had been Joyce's right-hand assistant for like 20 years showed up. And I said, I better put that on there. A while ago, Tom and Mary came walking in. And Mary, I think we met in 82 or 83 at Life Church. And Tom's going to hate this story, but she started dating Tom. And Mary's quite an evangelist, always has been, a real vibrant soul winner. And we used to have this big parade in St. Louis every year on, was it St. Patrick's Day or something? And so we went down there, and I wouldn't do this today, but I do think it's biblical, but I had a 12-foot cross I carried everywhere. And so I had my cross down at the parade, and I was 2 full blocks ahead of the beginning of the parade. And I had about 30 people with me, and I was just going to step out in the road when the parade started and just walk in front of the parade with my cross. And I had people passing out tracts and stuff. And so we were standing there until last minute. I remembered I had forgotten something, and I was standing there holding that cross, and Tom was standing by me. I'd never met him before, just knew he was with Mary. I said, hey, Tom, hold my cross. And I gave him a 12-foot cross, and he was like, and then while I ran to get something out of the car or something, 2 of his buddies from work, Tom worked at and retired from United Parcel Service, and 2 of his buddies from work came walking by, and they each had a 6-pack holding it by the plastic ring, drinking, and they went, hey, Tom, what are you doing? He said, it's not my cross. And I've preached that around the world, literally. It's not my cross. But we love these guys. They've been partners with our ministry for years. And I've had a couple of surgeries in recent years, and Tom's come over and helped take care of my yard some for me. So good to see you guys. And so, I want to, time is just so precious, I feel like, when I'm up here. But I just want to tell you some of the things we're doing, because as Pastor Tony said, you guys support us generously every month. And a lot of times it's hard to figure out what that could really mean. But when we have regular, committed, faithful, every month support, I can project way into the future. Like we've already got our plans made through next March, for pretty much everything from now to next March. But we've already got plans booked for September, airplane tickets, conferences, leadership meetings, all kinds of stuff. And I can't work a part-time job and do everything we do. And so it comes by partner support. Tom and Mary are partners with us. Other people here are. And we take that money and we put it all together, and we have managed to accomplish great things. So I thought maybe you'd like to just hear a couple things this morning. So I'm going to start in India, and I want to show you a picture. Can you guys show that first picture? So last September, Sherry and I were in India. We're in a very remote village, and one of the things we do is put wells in villages that have no water. So this pastor had came and wrote a letter and asked us for a well. So we went out there and put a well at his church. But while we were dedicating the well, I walked around a little bit and I saw this, and you can see the branches on top. It's not poles or anything, it's just tree branches with a tarp over it. And that's where the pastor and his wife and his 2 little boys lived. And look, that broke my heart. I just thought, man, this is 2026. Should pastors live like that? Sleep on the ground? You can see back there a little board with some dishes on it, their clothes hanging on a wire. I was like, that's just not right. And so we're always building churches, wells, parsonages and stuff. And I told Sherry, we're going to build a parsonage for that guy. We don't have the money to do a well, but we're going to build a parsonage. So we started a little project. And can you show the next picture? That's their house. It's amazing. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. See how we put a big porch on the front so they can gather there? And can you show the next picture? There's Sherry and the pastor and his wife. We had that furniture made for them personally. And they're sitting there. Look how happy they are. Can you show the next picture? That's a bed in their bedroom. So, it's life-changing when you do that for somebody. Show the next picture. See, that's their old house. You see what it is now? It's a chicken coop. That pastor and his wife literally were living in a chicken coop. And that's the kind of things that you help us do. And we do that all the time. Right now, we're going back to India on September 7th. And we're building 2 church buildings. They'll each seat about 100 people each. We're building 2 parsonages that connect to those church buildings where 2 more pastors can have a house. We're drilling 2 wells in front of those, and we're drilling 4 other wells in other villages. And right now, actually, we have about almost 180 wells that we've drilled in very remote parts of India. You can't just get on an airplane and fly and stay in a 5-star hotel in Chennai and go to these places. They're very remote. And when we get to India, we always spend 2 or 3 days driving 12 to 14 hours a day, just going village, 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 village. And I love this statistic right here. I was very hesitant about it 20 wells back. But my team assures me that every day, at least 1 million people are drinking water from our wells. 1 million people, just think about that. I mean, that totally blows me away. And I was telling Pastor Tony last night that Sherry and I have held over 200 crusades, planted over 200 churches, not just in India, but around the world. But, the most money we ever spent on a crusade was $365,000. And that was for a 5 or 7 day crusade. And when the crusade's over, it's pretty much just forgotten. A German guy that lives in India did some research on a crusade that a Canadian named Peter Youngren did. And after a year, he could only identify about 10 people that were added to the church from a huge crusade. Now look, don't write crusades off. There's a purpose for crusades. Number 1, they give the church a voice to the city. Number 2, they give the church visibility in the city. Number 3, if there's churches in that city, they give validity to those pastors. And number 4, people know where they can go for help. So there's real purpose in crusades. But as far as adding people to the church, it doesn't really work so well. And so India's almost stopped at crusade, open-air crusade evangelism. Look, we started doing these wells, and we do a well for $5,000, put it in a remote village. Every time it's put in front of a church building. So that means we trained a pastor. You get out there every morning at about 4:30, you turn the switch onto that well. There'll be hundreds of buckets lined up, people waiting to get water. You greet people, talk to people, let people know who you are. Your wife meets them, your kids meet them. If they're sick, you pray for them. You become friends with them. You let them find out that we're not weird. A lot of times when somebody aren't like you, they think you're weird. Yeah, you know why Catholics don't go to Protestant churches? They don't know what goes on in here. You know why Protestants don't go to Catholic churches? We don't know what goes on in there. Yeah, and so they find out we're not weird, that we're not strange. But the key is on Monday they go get water, on Tuesday they go get water, on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They go to church every day. And you know what happens if you go to church every day to get water? Eventually, you get living water. Come on. And so we have 1 million people getting water every day, and we're just going to keep doing them, We've never done big fundraiser or anything for these church parsonage well projects, people just step up and say, I want to sponsor one, or I want to do one in my mom's name or something. And we're just doing them all over South India, mostly in the state of Tamil Nadu. How many can we do? Well, right now we have 300 applications of villages that want wells, so it's pretty much unlimited. So we're doing that all the time. We have a boys' home and a girls' home, and right now we're building a new administrative building for those homes. It'll be a reception area, a day room for kids that are sick, counseling room, a playroom, all kinds of stuff. It'll be dedicated in September. Every Sunday morning we feed 200 to 250 people a hot meal, street people, homeless people, just poor people. They can go to the church and they can get a hot meal. And you know, the church fixes it every Sunday, Tony. They order the rice from a restaurant, and then everything else that goes with it, they fix it. And it doesn't look very appealing to us Americans, where they put it in this black plastic bag, and it's hot. And they give them a bottle of water and a hot meal, and the meal is really enough for 2 meals that day. So we do that every day. And right now in northern Costa Rica, in a little city called Upala, it's about 10 or 15 miles from Nicaragua. You know, it's kind of weird. I keep looking at these people, but these people over here are important too. And yeah, and anyhow, I found this church years ago, started going there, working with this pastor. He's one of the most loving, kind, servant-hearted people I've ever met. His name is Henry Ramaya, just an amazing guy. And he helps me do things like school year starts there in February, and each year we give away a few hundred backpacks with school supplies for kids, for poor people. And he's got a greenhouse, he's got a garden, and he grows food for the community. And so they had a little tiny kitchen in the back of their church building. And I was there last year, and I saw he was building something behind there, just like a concrete pad. I said, "What are you doing, Henry?" He said, "I'm going to build a community kitchen." I said, "Tell me about that kitchen." So he said, "Well, it's going to be bigger, and we can have commercial appliances in it, and we'll be able to really serve the whole community." And he does events all the time. At least every week there's some event where he's feeding people. And I said, "Well, we are going to help you do that." And so right now, that project is underway. It'll be completed in January, and we'll go dedicate it. And so we give pastors motorcycles, bicycles. We have pastors' meetings everywhere. Next month we'll have a pastors' meeting in Krompet, India, just outside of Chennai. There will be about 125 pastors there. We love on pastors. We help missionaries. And everything that we do, you guys have your hand in that. And so I don't get to come here very often and tell you that, but thank you so much. Thank you. I like this lady on the front row. She's a clapper. Come on. Yeah, and if you want to know more about what we're doing, if you go to Facebook and look my name up, you can find it. And I do post some personal things, but I post a lot about where we are, what we're doing, the projects we have going on. And by the way, this is my wife, Sherry, up here. She's a pretty sweet girl, ain't she, Tom and Mary? Yeah, we've been married 54 years. Last week, I spoke at a men's conference in Kansas City, and somebody said, "How do you stay married for 54 years?" I said, "Just say yes." And you have to know what girls like. Do you know what girls like? Diamonds. You know what kind of diamonds they like? Big ones. Yeah, just give your wife a credit card, and she'll love you, guys. She'll love you. Yeah, I just sold my 2011 Ford diesel pickup truck, and I sold it to a pastor friend. He called me. He said, "Did you know that on that truck there's a place you can go on the dash and you can see actually how many hours that engine's been ran?" I said, "Yeah, I know that." He said, "Did you know there's a place on that truck where you can see how many hours that engine idled?" And I said, "Yeah, I know that." He said, "Well, do you know that truck ran almost a little over 9,000 hours and it idled over 3,000? I said, "Yeah, I know that." He said, "How can you idle a truck for 3,000 hours? I said, "Shopping with your wife." You just pull up in front of the store she wants to go to, let her out, sit out there, leave the air conditioner running in the summer, the heater on in the winter. When she comes out, you pull up to the door, get her in, go to the next one, let her out again, do it all over again. Yeah, and so I'm happy to be married 54 years. Somebody asked us, was talking to us on the elevator here yesterday, And they were a young couple, pretty sweet on each other. And Sherry said, yes, we've been married 54 years. They were like, 54 years? And Sherry said, yeah. And she started telling them that we've been married 54 years, but she was only 8 when we got married. I was 9. No, we were both 18. People say, why did you get married so early? I say, so I could raise her the way I wanted to. She tells people all the time that I'm still in training. I'm a slow learner. I like having fun when I'm up here. So today I'm going to talk to you about souls. You know, Pastor, you never told me what time I'm supposed to quit. Tell me. That's the best time right there. Yeah, I like that. Now, do I have 20 more minutes? 30? Can I get 40? No, I'll be done by 11:30 for sure, okay? I have important stuff to talk about up here today. So look, it's a bit intimidating me. I've been in the ministry 49 years, but when I come someplace where the pastor's like Tony, which is pretty rare, there's hardly anything I can say up here that he hasn't already taught in depth. And so I have to be really careful what I say because you've already heard it from a better source than me. But when it comes to missions, I can speak with more passion than almost anybody about missions. And that's because Sherry and I have committed our life to missions. Can I have some water? I saw that guy bring it up to you about an hour ago. I'm passionate about missions. You know, Tony, you know what it was like at Life Christian Church. And years ago, back when Joyce Meyer and I were both on staff there in the early 80s, we'd have staff meetings, and I'd always sit next to the pastor, who's my lifetime friend. And he would start here and go around the whole conference table. And every department head would talk about what was going on, and I need more money, I need more vehicles, I need more equipment, I need more help, all the things they needed. And I would almost say nothing, and I was over 4 departments, and most of them were over 1. And we'd get done, and Rick and I'd go to lunch. One day I said, you ever get sick of listening to them? He goes, what do you mean? I said, man, some of those people just go on and on and on and on. I said, wears me out within 5 minutes. I don't know how you put up with that. And he said, well, it's because you don't understand. Whenever Charlie LeBlanc talks to me, he represents the worship team, the musicians, and the worship in our church. And he's pleading their case to me when he talks to me. Whenever Joyce talks to me, she's representing the women's ministry. And she went through that whole thing. He said, you have open access to me. We go to lunch every week after staff meeting. Those guys are pleading their case. So when I'm here today, I'm pleading the case of the millions of unreached people in the world that have never had the chance to hear the name of Jesus. And I'm pleading the case of every missionary that serves and has served in cross-cultural ministries around the world. Like this amazing couple right back here. What are their names? Say it again. Tim and Becky or Ken? Yeah, they lived in India 15 years. Let me tell you, living 15 years in India is literally equal to living 30 years anywhere else in the world. And that is no joke. I've lived there, I know it. But I'm pleading their case today. I'm pleading the cause of souls today. Many years ago, I met Dr. Cho, who pastors the largest church in the world in Seoul, Korea. And we were sitting talking. I had my wife and my 3 children there who were 2, 5, and 6. He said, so you're moving to India? And I said, yeah. I said, why India? I said, well, then before I could say anything, he said, I was in India one time because of mechanical problems on the airplane. I never want to go back. You can have my share of India. I said, I'll take it. He said, I don't understand. Why are you taking these children to live in India? And I said, one reason. He said, what is that reason? I said, souls. He said, oh, souls. I understand. It's souls. That's what we have to be about, is winning souls. The world is waiting on us to preach the gospel to them. The world is dying and going into eternity without Jesus while they're waiting on us. And we have relegated missions, which I don't even like that word. You know why? It does not have a definition. What does missions mean? I mean, you know, years ago, we started calling everything in the church missions. because it had a connotation that made people feel sorry and have empathy to help for missions. So feeding programs were missions. This was the missions, that was the missions. The missions that's in the Bible is this. Let's see if I can find the right verse here. He said to them, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. He believes and is baptized will be saved, but he who does not believe will be condemned. Mark chapter 16, verses 15 and 16. Go into all the world and preach the gospel. That's missions. Getting up from where you are and going to another place. In the book of Genesis, in chapter 12, God spoke to Abraham, and he said, I want you to rise up from the place where you are, right here, and I want you to go somewhere else to the place that I will show you. That is cross-cultural missions. And Abraham packed up and he left. That's what missions really is. It's going and doing something else. I prefer going where no one else goes. I prefer doing what no one else does. And I learned years ago, if I'll go someplace and pioneer something, just like moving to India, if I go there and I pioneer a way to do things, other people will follow my path. And then when they start following my path, I go do something different somewhere else, because I told Sherry this week, if they can do 75% as good as what we do, then just let them go do it, and we'll go do it someplace else and try and help them rise up to the 100% level. Missions is about getting up and going someplace. The world is waiting for us to preach the gospel to them. Look, the United States of America is about 4% of the world's population, but at least 95% of the ordained ministers in the world live and minister in the USA, and that's not fair. And I don't think the USA should have less churches. Well, maybe I really do think that, but that's another subject. But what we need is to spread the gospel out further. People don't want to make this sacrifice. You have no idea what a commitment was for that couple sitting right there to pack up their stuff and move to India. You have no idea what that meant. When they were in missionaries in India and Pune, what year did you start there? 1998. You're just babies. But yeah. When we lived in India, if we wanted to call the USA, we had to go to a hotel, book a phone call 12 hours in advance, go wait for the call to go through. It might last 2 minutes. It might last 10 minutes. You couldn't call home. No internet. No way to communicate. You're on the other side of the world. If you have a problem, it's not like you can call 911. You can't call your pastor and say, Pastor, come and help me. You just have to figure it out. When you make those kind of commitments, and then I see other people in the church that have no commitment to missions, I realize we have a miscommunication in the church. We think missions is for other people, but when Jesus said in the Great Commission, that was actually said 5 times in at least 3 different locations, Jesus was saying it to all of us. Go to the world. We all have a commitment to reach the world. We have a responsibility to reach the world. Well, Brother Jack, I don't want to move to the other side of the world. Tough. So what? You don't know what you're missing out on. You have no idea what it's like to go live in another country, learn another culture, eat other food. But most of all, you don't know what it's like to pray the prayer of salvation with people that have never heard the name of Jesus before. Well, Pastor Jack, I just don't think I can do that. Romans chapter 10, verses 13 says, whosoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. That's the basic message of the gospel. That's the message I preach around the world. Then it says, how can they hear unless there be a preacher? And how can they preach unless they're sent? It takes 3 things to fulfill the Great Commission. Number 1, someone to go and preach. Number 2, someone to listen. Number 3, somebody to send. The prayer and financial support of missions is equally as important as the going and preaching. They work hand in hand. What we've done is we've preached the same gospel to the same people over and over again, and we haven't reached out. You know, years ago, I went to Borneo. It's an island. It belongs partially to Indonesia, partially to Malaysia, and then there's a little kingdom there. Remember where the kingdom is, Tony? I don't remember. There's a little kingdom there. And I went there to preach. And to get there from here, it would take 5 or 6 days just to get there. And the last 2 days is in a boat. One was in a big boat, and it went upriver about 50 miles an hour. It was a pretty wild ride. But then we got in a little boat that was about 30 feet long, one person wide, no seat. You just sat on the bottom of the boat, and had a 15-horse Yamaha engine. And we just kept going up this river, up this river. Beautiful scenery everywhere, the crocodiles, the tropical birds flying. Go by a little village. People would be on the side of the river selling produce and meat and different things. There was no roads to get in there. The only way to get in there was to walk or ride those boats up there. And I was like, man, I'm going to go to the Iban headhunters. I'm going to preach the gospel. They already told me no white foreigners ever been there. They've never heard English. They've never heard the gospel. I'm going to be the first one. It was brutal traveling there. We come into shallow water, have to get out of the boat, pick up the boat, run to the next deep water, put the boat back in, go back up. And we did that for 8 hours. And I kept seeing these buildings. They were built back from the river about 150 feet. They were on stilts. They were made out of bamboo. And they were real long, and they were called longhouses. And as many as 150 families would live in one of those longhouses. And I was going to the very last one at the end of the beginning of the river, I guess. I was so excited. When I got there, I saw a lady, only one lady in this village selling something, and she just had a little makeshift stand made out of boards nailed together. They weren't cut off even or anything. And I thought, what the heck is this lady selling? I mean, this is the ends of the earth, people. So I went over there. You know what she was selling? Coca-Cola. I was ticked off. I was upset. I said, how in the heck did Coca-Cola beat the gospel to this village? I mean, this is headhunters, shrunken heads hanging off their front porch, blowguns where they go hunting and shoot monkeys out of the trees. It was remote. It was tough. It was brutal. I slept on the floor at night. Some ladies were like this, but in those longhouses, every woman wanted you to come to her house for dinner. So I ate 5 dinners the first night. It was terrible. Anyhow, I was like, how the heck did Coca-Cola beat the gospel? You want to know how they beat it? Because back in the 1930s, Coca-Cola had a meeting of all the heads of departments, and they said, we want to be the #1 soft drink maker in the world. What will it take for us to be #1? So they came up with some points. Number one is if they wanted to be the #1 soft drink maker in the world, they had to put their best people in the international department. And they did. They pulled people from everywhere and put them in the international department. Number 2, we have to have a superior distribution system to get Coca-Cola syrup from here to the world, because all Coca-Cola syrup was made in Atlanta, Georgia. Number 3, we have to risk the future of Coca-Cola on this international division. But if we do that, we can become #1. And they did. They put their best people in the international division. They put all their money in the international division. Then they started sending people out to sell the product. And they became #1. You know how Coca-Cola beat the gospel to that Iban village? They were more committed than the church. Is that sad or what? To me, it's heartbreaking. They had a greater commitment to Coca-Cola than we have to the gospel. The first time I ever told this story was in Clinton, Louisiana. A guy came up to me afterwards dressed in a very nice suit, very sharp guy. He said, I want to know how you know that story. And I proudly said, Reader's Digest. He said, what? And I said, I did read some of that in Reader's Digest. He said, well, I'm going to tell you what you just said is totally true. I'm an executive vice president at Coca-Cola. Clinton is my hometown. I retired last week. I've never been in this church before, and I've only ever heard that story in a Coca-Cola history presentation. It's true. It's just true. That night, I was sitting on one of the only 2 chairs in a longhouse that had about 100 families living in it. I was sitting in a chair. The chief was sitting here, and the Ibans, they're headhunters, and if they take a head, they put a dot tattoo on their knuckle. So, of course, everywhere I went the whole couple weeks, I was just looking at knuckles everywhere. And this guy had dots on almost every knuckle. Had a hammer tattoo on his neck right here. Anybody know what that means? They didn't put it in with a little electric thing. They took a little hammer thing and hammered that tattoo on his throat. He was sitting next to me. His wife was sitting on the floor on this side of me. The translator was sitting over here. It was extremely hot. I had on a t-shirt and a pair of shorts. I'm just preaching the love of Jesus to him. This little lady sitting on the floor next to me. All of a sudden I realized she's leaned over and she's leaned up against my leg. I was like, I wonder if the chief can see that. Then, all of a sudden, she starts scratching my leg. I was like, whoa, this ain't good. They'd already warned me that at night I had to make sure where I slept because they would send girls to sleep with me to keep me warm and happy. And I was like, what's going on? So I said to the translator, hey, Jen, I don't know what's going on, but I'm afraid the chief's going to be really mad. He said, why? I said, because his wife's sitting here leaned up against me with her arm on my leg, scratching my leg. He goes, oh my God, you're in. I said, what does that mean? He said, among Ebans, the highest form of affection is scratching. You're accepted. If the chief's wife accepts you, everybody accepts you. I was the first one to preach the gospel there. It's so awesome to think that if you go to heaven, you're going to see Ebans that are going to be there because I went there. That's the commitment we have to preaching the gospel. You know, one of the things we've done is build teams to reach people. And in North India, I started going there in 87, and there's some big tribes of people up there. But I started going up there, and I heard about the Bhojpuri people. And so I started praying for reaching out to the Bhojpuri. And you know, I'll tell you a little secret. If you start praying for something or somebody and you do it regularly, you'll develop deep affection in your heart for them. So I started praying for the Bhojpuri, and I went up there and held a crusade, and I went back and held another crusade, and I bought a big bus, like a city bus, and converted it into a crusade evangelism team, and it had a stage on top of it. It had a stage that folded down from the side. It had a 70,000-watt generator, and it had a sound system, light system, 6 bunk beds where guys could sleep in it, and they would do at least 20 days a month of village evangelism out in the Bhojpuri tribal area. And, you know, that sounds easy for me to say that, but to raise the money to build that, no one had ever done that in India before, to build a unit like that, to recruit guys, train them, get them to be willing to go out to remote places. And I came back to the States for a conference, and I was speaking at that conference that we used to have in Tony, the big missions conferences, you know. And there was a guy there, I wish I could remember his name, but he was from Regent University, and he heard me talk about Bhojpuri. And he came up to me, he said, so you're reaching the Bhojpuri? And I said, yeah, why? And he said, look, did you know that the Bhojpuri are in the top 5 unreached people groups in the world? I said, no, I didn't know that. And you can look it up. If you go look up the Joshua Project, it'll tell you all about unreached peoples. In the world today, there are over 17,000 unique people groups. And over 6,000 of them, about 4.3 billion, are unreached by the gospel. He said, yeah, you're reaching an unreached people group. So I had this evangelism team going, and one night they were out in a village, and some radical Hindus came. And don't think this only happened years ago. This week, I got a video from one of my key workers in India of them beating a pastor to the ground outside of a church in India last Sunday. It happens all the time. We just don't see it on our news. Anyhow, they were out in a village holding a little crusade. And, you know, if you go to a village and there's no power, and you have power, light, sound, everybody comes out, and some radical Hindus came, and they attacked my workers, and they took a piece of rebar, and they hit one of the workers in the head and split his head open, and he fell down on the ground and bled out and died. And so they immediately went into somebody's little house there, and somebody got in a car and drove to the next village where there was a phone and called back to our missions compound in Bihar and said, we've come under attack. We need somebody to come and rescue us. So one of my workers, Samuel, got in a van, drove there, got there about 3 o'clock in the morning. And he said, look, they were really traumatized. And the Hindus were still threatening them. And he said, everybody get in the van. I'm going to take you back to the compound. We'll come back tomorrow and get the equipment. Don't worry about the equipment, but we have to go right now. So people started getting in the van, and Mangopani's wife, the guy who had died, wouldn't get in the van. And Samuel said, come on, sister, we have to go. It's not safe here. We have to leave. She said, I'm not leaving. And he said, no, you don't understand. It's not safe here. We have to leave right now. We're all at risk. And she said, no, you don't understand. When they spilled Mangopani's blood out on the ground, his blood cries out The gospel must be preached here. I will not leave this village till there's a church. His blood still cries out. The blood of Jesus still cries out. You know, I was just in that part of India in January. There's 6 churches in that little village now. You know why? Because the blood of a martyr cried out. The church must be here. We miss the point of what it's really all about. I don't really think, I wish you would, I don't think everybody's going to move to a foreign country. I don't think everybody's going to become a missionary. I don't think everybody's going to give $1 million to missions, but we all have to be involved. This church is a missions-hearted church. When you give your tithes and offerings here, part of your tithes and offerings goes to reach the world. I know that you guys support Dan and Brenda Salas, who are in Panama and Central America. I don't know who else you support. Your money goes to do that, but we also need your prayers. We need you to pray. I need you to pray like you were one of those unreached people that have never heard the name of Jesus. That's the purpose of the church. I have a great friend named Perry Stone, and he knows the Bible like nobody I've ever been around before. And I've been with him lots of times after services and back rooms when pastors want to talk all this end-time theology stuff with him, which, to be honest with you, end-time theology doesn't interest me very much. The theology I'm interested in is how to get people to heaven tomorrow. But there's nothing wrong with that. They'll have these discussions, and, you know, Ezekiel said this, and Isaiah said that, whatever. I just sit there. Eventually, Perry will look at me and say, what do you think, Jack? I said, I think Jesus said, when this message of the gospel has been preached as a witness to all nations, then shall the end come. So I'm pretty sure he's not coming tomorrow because we still got 6,000 nations to reach. That's what I really believe. Jesus is waiting on us to reach people. That's what we're all about. So thank you, Tony, for being a missions-hearted church. Thank you for caring. Thank you for sending. I know you've traveled around the world many times yourself. We all have to have that heart to reach the world. Mangopani's blood still cries out today. This village must have a church. Amen? Amen. That too strong? I hope not. I hope you can digest it. Meditate on it. Think about it. What could you do to help reach the world? Let's pray.